There we go.
Okay, so this week on Some More Good News, we have one of our faculty members, Chris Davis, who is a poet
Mhm.
and professor of English,
Mhm.
and one of our graduate students, Austin Demeglio. And the reason I have gathered these two together today is to talk about the literary journal that we oversee in our department, Sanskrit. So I wonder if you both would like to talk about that and your role with the journal, um, some of your highlights of working with it, crazy stories you might want to share.
Sure. My name is Austin, and I worked in the literary journal for, I guess, 2 issues. So I guess that's 2 years.
Mhm.
The first I worked on it I was only a content editor, but that one actually won the Pacemaker Award, which is
Mhm.
like a prestigious award in the literary journal community. So it's like a national award, and I didn't go to the conference, but Melissa and the associate editor then went to the conference, and like it's this whole thing. And actually no, Melissa went, I think, last year in last October, so a year ago, and then the award was presented for the year before for the Pacemaker, and that's really cool. And then that issue, the 2019 issue, won has been winning awards since it came out, so that's really awesome.
Oh, great.
And we won't find out for the 2020 issue until like a few months, maybe like this month or a few months from now, which is super cool.
It's won that award many years,
Yeah.
many times, I think in a row. So that's really incredible. Mhm.
The
I
last
didn't know there
time.
was a.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I didn't know there was a conference connected to the award. That's great. Mhm.
Yeah, it's in Washington D.C., I believe.
Ah, great. Mhm.
Yeah.
I think so many people don't realize that we have an award-winning literary journal
Yeah.
in our department. I'm
Mhm.
wondering, so what do you include in the journal? What would someone find if they opened it up? Is it all from our university or elsewhere, or what does that look like?
So surprisingly, people don't know how like international this magazine is. So it's like national obviously and international. So we have a map in the office where we get pieces from all over like literally all over the world. Like there's a guy from Italy who sends every year. We got a submission from Singapore. It's like so like, and I don't even know how they find out about this, but it's from all over the world, and it's mostly from obviously not students from UNCC. It's a majority of people from outside the state, and it's really cool because I didn't think that was when I first started working there, because I'd worked previously in another literary magazine at my community college in New Jersey, and it was only students. But this one is literally all over the world, which is really cool, and I thought that was awesome. That it isn't just UNCC students; it's people from all over the country, people from Singapore, Italy. It's so cool.
That's amazing. And we have so many students who are doing creative writing as a concentration at the undergraduate level and then at the graduate level too, that we have so much talent coming through our department as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's your role, Chris, in this?
I've been working as a first reader almost every year I've been here, probably every year. So after the submission deadline, the editors put together packets, I think of maybe 3 or 4 different packets to send to first readers, creative writing faculty usually, I think. So the past few years, it's come as a file that I've printed out. It's just always interesting to know that these are submissions from all around the world. And although many students that have been in my workshops have submitted work, I hardly ever see a poem that I recognize from one of our workshops. So I think the editors are good about farming out the submissions away from people who might have a predisposition or bias. But so it's really very interesting to just go through and read the poems and stories and just try to, we rank them on a scale of 1 to 5. And so I just try to be true to my perceptions of the quality, and and I do think about, okay, what will the ones I've given a 5 to, if they were all to appear in the journal, uh, if the editors were choosing from these sort of ones that I've ranked highly, what would the journal look like? How might it evolve? And it's just very interesting to think about that. A little bit differently every year. So. Mhm.
I imagine it's this organic organism that every
Mhm.
time it looks a little bit different, and it all just depends. Do you have like a backlog of submissions that you go through, or you have a call for submissions each time and then you get a new batch with each call?
So it's like a new batch with each issue. So like, um, if people send, so we usually every year the deadline is usually November. So up until November of every year, if we get submissions after that, that'll be going towards the next issue. And then any submission after that day will be going towards the next, from like, I guess, December to the next November. So
Hmm.
anything from then, it will go towards that that issue.
Hmm.
So let's like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna, no, go ahead.
That was actually it.
Well, I was gonna ask you each, what would be the highlight for you of the work you've done with Sanskrit? Like, could you name one thing that just stands out to you as that was an amazing moment, or this one of your favorite things that happened as part of this work?
I can think of a few poems and stories that I was really excited by. Uh, I can't think of their titles now, but really I thought, this is great. This is totally publishable. It'll be great in the journal. And when students and faculty pick up this issue of Sanskrit and read this, they're just going to really be excited. So every year that I've done it, there have been at least a few pieces that I felt that way about. So
That's really cool.
yeah.
Austin, what was a highlight for you? Editing.
I don't, and I guess because you just read so much, and like, so a lot of the times the stuff like blends together, and it's crazy because a lot of, it's so funny how many poems, I'm holding a nail file, I'm sorry, a lot of the poems sometimes have like, are very related in like subject matter.
Mhm.
And I think that's really cool because obviously the way, it's not planned that way because you have different poets and different authors like submitting very similar work, and I think that's really cool. Like stuff like that like makes me happy because I guess everyone's on like a wavelength, and that's really interesting to me.
That is interesting. I wonder if you said that there's a new deadline this year, November. Do you know what's the deadline, the day of November?
Specifically, I'm not sure, but it's usually mid-November-ish, so like
Mhm.
anywhere between like the 10th and the 15th,
Yeah.
something like that.
I wonder if this new batch of submissions, part of that wavelength will be trying to reckon with this time we're living in where there is so
Yeah,
much uncertainty.
I'm going to guess that's absolutely the case, yeah.
it'll be exciting to read a lot of pieces that deal with what we're going through right now.
Speaking of
Yeah.
that, I mean, but you were editing and you were reading
Yep.
during this time. I mean,
Yeah,
so what was
and
that like? What were the particular challenges of trying to think about and then produce maybe this journal at
so
the pandemic?
by March, all of the, so COVID started in March. So that email we got like the March 17th or something like that. So all of the stuff had already been, the on the editor side,
Hmm.
usually during the fall is like the editing side of like crunch time and busyness, and then the spring side is usually like design. So by March, we were trying to make our final design edits. So we weren't really editing pieces by that time. We were figuring out the like the final layout, the final like design aspects and that stuff, and what pairings we were doing with each art pieces. And Melissa and I were just, I think in February or early March, we had just attended the NCCMAs, I think, which is a conference for just like the stately literary magazines. And then we got a critique on our magazine. And then we were probably, I think, working on our critique, seeing if we can fit in any of the critiques that we got during that conference. Yeah.
What kinds of critique did you get?
So like our use of like white space. So sometimes the person who is looking at the magazine will be like, "Oh, there's too much white space." She focused on our font usage. So what fonts go with which, how they play together, how they look together on a page. What if it's like pleasing to the eye, the different colors of fonts, types fonts, the size, and what pieces look good together on a page.
There's so much beyond just the writing of it that goes
Yeah.
into this, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I don't think when in those conferences, like when we get judged for the pacemaker, I don't think it's even the writing that gets judged. It's more so the design, like the cover, the cover, the colors. It's all like the artistic side of the whole design of the magazine.
I've always imagined that it's very interesting for for creative writers, creative writing students to interact with visual art students and that side, you know, but some really interesting creative activity happens when you're designing the journal.
Yeah, it's really cool because the only time we interact with, like, the editors interact with designers is towards the end, because one of the jobs that I had was pairing on a page, pairing a poem or because we don't pairing a poem to a piece of the visual art, because we don't pair short stories because it's longer works of writing. And that's actually a lot of fun, because again, sometimes you get like that'll just like a perfect fit. Like you have a picture or a painting of snow, and then you have a poem about snow or winter, and I'm like, oh, that's perfect. And then so it'll go through. So like I did that 2 years in a row, and then like other people look at it and see what look at it and see if it's good, if it works, and then look. So it's like a multiple people, and it's really cool. So that's always a lot of fun. And then if we're like crunch time, we do like these group like accept and reject. So for the judge's job, so after us, like what Chris does, the editors do something different, where it's like an accept or reject. And if it gets 3 accepts, it goes in. If it gets 3 rejects, it goes out. So we don't do like that 1 to 5 thing. So it's very different from what the professional judges do. But if we need like a whole group of people, so even the art people, the on design team help the editors, and we'll just like do like a group reading session and be like, oh, we all accept this or we all reject this. And like that's cool to see different people who don't write, like non-English majors and like the art majors, to see what their opinion is on the different pieces.
That's very interesting. That's great. So it's a group of 5, the writers and the artists, and a piece has to get 3 acceptances, 3 yeses to be.
Yeah. Because the associate editor is really in charge, like they're second in command, but they're in charge of mainly the editing team. So there's the associate editor, and then usually 2 or 3 content editors, and then they work on the editing, and then obviously the editor in chief is in charge of the whole thing, right? And then there's like the lead designer, and then the lead designer has 2 or 3 other designers, and then there's also a promotions position as well.
One of the things that I love about this conversation is it's reminding me how collaborative so much of the work we do is, even though a lot of those collaborations stay invisible. I mean, this is a very visible collaboration, and it's also such a great example of how we talk at the university about what we're doing is making new knowledge. But so often that is understood through in the context of STEM disciplines and not as much humanities and arts. And that's what you're describing here, is this practice and process of making new knowledge, and making new knowledge with lots of different collaborative makers. So
Yeah,
I think that's
right.
just wonderful.
Right, it sure is. Yeah.
So I wonder if you guys want to talk a little bit about what you've been up to during this pandemic as humans. I mean, we can talk about our roles as students and all of that and faculty, but you know, what has it been like? What have been the highlights or the challenges of living through what is now, gosh, what is it, 8 months of
Ah,
a pandemic,
uh-huh.
all of its
It's like
iterations?
time stood still and also zoomed forward at the same time. It's
You find
wild.
yourself forgetting what day of the week it is? Because I do that all
Yes.
the time.
So right after I was upset about not being able to walk for graduation,
Oh,
even before that, I was staying up very, very late in the night and early morning because and I play a lot of like video games online with my friends, and so we all were doing that. So we would stay up till the sun came out, and like the concept of time and like days just were not there for me personally at all.
How about you, Chris?
well, I don't know. It's at the beginning, when the spring semester ended in May. It was so strange because everything was closed down. We couldn't do anything normal, but it was a beautiful spring. Remember that? It was one of
Yeah.
the most luscious springs I've ever seen.
Yep.
And I had an assignment to write a poem, an assignment from the North Carolina Museum of Art in Raleigh. They were putting together an anthology of ekphrastic poems based on pieces they had there. And Bryn Chancellor also has contributed a piece to that. I was writing about a bust of Marcus Aurelius that they have.
Oh, wow.
And I had uh, worked on the poem throughout the spring semester, and then suddenly May was open and I was able to finish it and was excited about that. And then I just got lost in the sort of open-ended time zone of summer full of anxiety, and it was strange to be relaxed and terrified at the same time.
Yeah, it is a weird, and it feels endless at this point.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
we're clearly not done.
Yeah.
But it's, do you get either of you want to share a story about something unusual or funny that you experienced during this time, besides living like a vampire, Austin?
I mean, I didn't leave the house much until like recently, so I don't know if I have any funny stories or crazy stories myself.
What about you, Chris? Do you have
Uh,
any crazy stories?
well, let's see. I took my bicycle to the Boys Park every single day, and just rode and rode around constantly. And that's what I remember of the early part of the summer, basically. um, and just tried to read something other than the newspaper. So I read a couple of biographies of composers, and yeah.
I didn't, are you a fan of classical music, or when you say
Oh yeah,
I didn't
yeah,
know
very
that about
much.
you?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Huh,
It's so it was nice to have some time to read books like that.
yeah,
Yeah,
those times seem fewer and further between.
yeah.
Well, it's been really delightful to talk with both of you. What a pleasure. I've had you in class before, Austin, and it's just, yeah, it's lovely to talk with you both. And thank you for sharing about all of your work on that really important journal.
You.
Austin, is the 2019 issue of Sanskrit on campus in boxes outside in
Yeah,
Fretwell?
well,
Or
technically it's the 2020 version.
oh, okay.
So, I'm not sure. They're at campus, but I'm not sure if they're distributed yet because,
They are. I
yeah,
think they are.
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's gonna be a purple. I have it. I have one in my apartment somewhere, but it's
Mhm.
not in my near vicinity. But it's gonna be purple because it's the design was supposed to be like a 2020 future 20, like a 1920s meets 2020 type of theme, which was really cool. But so it's very purple.
Okay.
It'll
Well,
be great when we're back up on campus to see copies of it around.
Yeah, it's crazy because I've only recently saw the cover like few weeks ago, like, and it's been printed since April, May,
Mm.
so which is really unfortunate.
okay, so everyone should try and get a copy of Sanskrit.
Absolutely.
If you have anything that you're interested in submitting, you should do that
Yeah.
as soon as possible
Indeed.
because the deadline is November.
Yep,
Yeah.
and if you miss it, there's always next year.
There's
Yeah.
always next year, but why miss this year?
Yeah,
Yeah.
why? Just go ahead and do it.
Well, thank you again, both of you, for
Thank
joining
you.
this interview, and I've really enjoyed learning more about Sanskrit.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
All right,
you.
take care.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Mhm.